Okay. Okay, what's up, everybody? Looks like we're good to go. I'm gonna teach you how to draw some hands today, or at least how I draw hands. Hopefully, that somewhat translates into helping you draw some hands, seeing as they are one of the hardest things of, of the body to draw. And once you kind of get the foundations, then they're real fun to draw. And I mean, I myself, I'm still like consistently looking at reference and even my own hand all the time, taking pictures of my hand and poses that I want to draw. So I myself am not like the hand god. That would be Mr. Kohei Horikoshi Sensei. He's the hand god. But yeah, so let's just get into it. Right now I'm just kind of drawing a very basic hand, or just like something I can have as a basic foundation to help explain my thoughts. So check it out. I have a guideline going from the ring finger to the index finger, and the middle finger is kind of going above it. And you want to make sure you keep in mind the finger's lengths, because that really plays into just the hand as a whole when you're drawing it. You can see I kind of convex the shape of the fingers if I'm just trying to make a somewhat of a simple cartoony hand. We're not trying to go hyper realistic here, so I always try to make sure the fingers kind of convex downwards to the base of the hand. But what you want to pay attention is that if you have the three connections, if you look at your finger, it has three connections, and that kind of tip of your finger should always basically end where your pinky does. You'll if you look at your hand, you'll see your pinky kind of ends somewhat close to where the tips of your index and your ring finger is. So yeah, now we're gonna start shading it. I'm just kind of gonna be laying down some pretty loose shadows, just so we can get some sort of depth into it. I always like to make sure that the shadows are going up to the tips, because they kind of are the most protruded part of the finger. And so let's move over to a female hand, which is a bit more dainty, and the fingers are a bit more pointed. You can really exaggerate the difference between a male and female hand. Males will tend, you could almost go boxy with the fingers, while for girls they could almost be little spikes. I mean, there's so many different types of hands in traditional animation, or just animated media in general. But the way I tend to do it is I'll just basically draw a male hand and then go over it again and make sure that it's a bit more dainty. You can even add some nails hiding behind the fingers there, kind of poking out from the background. But yeah, you can see I'm just going a bit more pointed on the ends, but I'm still kind of keeping that more convex shape going down to the base. But yeah, there's my basic male and female hand to start with. And I think I'm just going to go through this whole sheet and just draw a bunch of hands and just try to explain my thought process as I go through it. I'm not super sure how to construct a proper tutorial, so I think if you just kind of hear my thoughts as I'm drawing it should be somewhat helpful to help you understand where I'm coming from when I do draw hands. But you can see now I'm just getting like really hyper focused on the structure of it, and that's where the liquify tool comes in. And you can see at the bottom there I'm kind of pushing and pulling it around to get it to a place where I like for it to be. And now I'm just going to adjust kind of the rotation of it to make the bottom of the thumb part of your hand seem like it's really kind of jutting outwards from the wrist. Typically there won't be as much as a sort of stepladder feeling when your arm is leading into the side where your pinky is, but when you focus on a bunch of hands and even look at yours, the wrist will do a real curve, a real sort of like 90-degree angle into that sort of thumb connection. I wish I knew proper hand anatomy, or hand vernacular. You're just gonna have to deal with my made up phrases as I try to struggle my way through this. But yes, moving on, I think I'm gonna do like a side profile of one, just so you can kind of understand. You always want to make sure it ends on a point, which is the knuckle. The knuckle is basically the connection between the base of the hand and the fingers, so always focus on using it as like an anchor point to sort of find out where the rest of your hand is going to go. I just realized I tried to explain to you what a knuckle is. I'm sure everybody knows, but like in the way I do it, I always kind of use it as, like I said, an anchor point to kind of make the fingers jut off from. But going back to that foundation where the different lengths of the fingers, you want to kind of focus on that. Make sure that that ring finger and even that middle finger are poking out behind that pinky. I'm going to go with like a lifted index finger to help add some separation to it so it's not always the same shape. And you want to make sure you're following through so it feels natural, right? You don't want the finger in the background to feel disconnected from the rest of the hand, so that's why I'll follow through. And now I'm going to go ahead and resize the other fingers just because I want to make that middle finger a bit longer than the index. Because again, going back over to that first hand, you can see there's that slope from the middle finger to the pinky. Has the same slope on that first hand, so just try to make sure that that's consistent across all your hands. And then you have the index finger that goes down and matches the same ring finger. I'm going to be saying finger a lot in this video, so I hope it doesn't like become a word that just goes numb to you and you just kind of tune it out. Because fingers are important. You know, they make the world go round. They help you carry your groceries. They help you hold your pencil when you're drawing. And they also really help bring emotion into any of your drawings. Like, if I'm doing just even a face shot, I try to somehow work a hand in there because it almost feels like the emotion of a hand is much more important than even the face sometimes, you know? So, yeah, very important. That's why this is my first sort of construction tutorial is hands, just because it's one of my favorite parts of all of my drawings. So, yeah, I'm going to try to knock out that shadow, because that's not really how bones work. There we go. And I think adding on an arm will kind of give a bit more life to this sort of reaching out hand and make it seem somewhat of a dangling hand, I guess. Giving it a wrist, you want to make sure it always sort of pinches at that wrist point and gives that, and you add that little hand bone. You know, the hand bone. Come on, everybody has a hand bone. Look at, if you just bend your wrist in the way it looks in the drawing, you'll see it poking out right there. There's your hand bone. Now let's get real close and personal on that finger so you can kind of understand how I'm working with nails. So one of my favorite parts about drawing the finger specifically is the nail, because it is kind of the way you can tell if it's the top or the bottom of the finger if you add the nail. And you want to make sure it's not just, I mean, most of the time I'll just kind of add that sort of square shape, but if you're getting really up close and personal, you want to make sure that you do that sort of stair-step shape where the skin is overlapping the nail and then the nail is overlapping the tip of the finger, if that makes sense. Here's a real sort of close example. Yeah, that's a little, there we go. Yeah, because the nail comes out from the bottom of your skin. You can kind of see it if you look at your finger, and then shoots over the tip of the finger. So always make sure that you're kind of thinking about that. But okay, so I'm probably going to square off the tip of this finger a bit. I just kind of like doing squared shapes when it comes to them, just because, I don't know, you know. I mean, full disclosure, I think it's cool when the author of My Hero does it, so that's just how I do it. You know, sometimes you just pick up a stylistic touch just because the way you, okay, let me start that over. Part of creating your style is you'll pick up specific stylistic touches from others based on if you like the way it looks. Now, jumping off of that, when it comes to stylistic touch, usually for fingers, I said this earlier, but I really do like sort of widening the tips of them and kind of slimming them down as they trail down to the base of the hand. And I'm not sure why. I think, you know, if you look at your fingers, I mean, if I look at mine, it more so goes the opposite way, but I just feel like it gives more character, just kind of doing it backwards like that, especially when it's like a hand that's further away. Now I'm going to throw in some shadow to give it some dimension, and yeah, you can segment it off. Usually segmenting it off is something I don't do often, but if it's like really close up to the camera, then I'll make sure to add those little lines to show that there's 3 different sort of bones that connect. Alright, let's move over to another one. Let's see. With this one, I'm going to do more of a straight-on type of hand, kind of more so focusing on the silhouette before adding anything else. So a lot of tutorials that I watch say that you can think of a hand sort of as a mitten and then kind of cut out the fingers from there. So as you can see, like without all of the lines of the fingers, it does sort of look like a mitten, and it's a good place to start. But one little tip when you are adding the fingers that is kind of a nice touch is as they go into the base, you can create a little space in between them. Because if you close your hand, at least for me, I'm just going to keep saying at least for me because I'm not sure how everybody's hand in the world works, but there's a little tiny bit of space that I could see through. So it just kind of adds a bit more of a lifelike touch to it, you know? And again, I can throw in that shadow just to create segmented off sort of shapes, show that maybe the fingers are more pointed upwards. It kind of looks like there's compression on the hand sort of pressing down on a table, but I'm going to take that out just because I kind of like the straight on look. Now I'm going to move over to fists, because fists are something that we see often in like fighting animes and stuff, and so it's something you gotta do well if you want to like draw Goku or Luffy or something. So you usually start with an almond shape if it's a fist that's coming towards the camera, and you want to like make sure that there's kind of a slope starting where your index finger is in the knuckle and can go and goes downward to the pinky. And in this case, the index finger is going to be on the right side, and so I'm going to slope it down, and I'm trying to create these guidelines so you can kind of understand. And you'll make the thumb kind of come out from the bottom right, and you gotta think about the thumb as just kind of a complete different finger from the rest. It doesn't operate the same, so it's always coming around on the side. And I'll throw some shadow down as if the lighting's coming from the top, so I can create a plane change on the bottom of the fingers there. And now moving into another fist, we'll go with like a punching upwards angle. And for this one, I have to sort of break down the shape a bit more, kind of create that cube-ish look for the fist, just so I can kind of understand where the thumb is going to go. And like I said, with it being a whole different character, the thumb is really what kind of makes the whole hand stand out. Like, imagine a hand without a thumb, right? A fist without a thumb is just like it's just like the end of an arm, you know? It looks a little weird, so really using that thumb to utilize an anchor where the rest of your hand and finger are going to go definitely helps you sort of create the fist shape and kind of understand it better. Alright, so now I'm going to just kind of tighten up the little silhouette I created, throw in the knuckles there, and kind of segment off the fingers, using that line in the middle there to kind of show a plane change going on. And again, I always like adding the nail because it really kind of pushes that extra bit of detail that makes you understand what side the finger is facing. I mean, even though obviously it's not the bottom of the thumb, but it just kind of helps visualize it easier. And now we're gonna get some shadow color and, you know, color that plane change. You know, coloring the plane change is, you know, incremental to creating a nice little shape with some suggested detail. You know, just get that lighter color, fill it in a little bit there. There we go. You know, got some light coming from the top side, so I want to make sure I color the bottom of that little palm pad thing. Palm pad. That's definitely the scientific term for your palm and the little squishy part at the bottom. But yeah, hey, take me for example. You don't have to be a genius at understanding anatomy to at least know something when it comes to drawing. So, just use your eye. Although I will say that if you really want to, you should probably learn that stuff if you want to just really level up. But, yeah, you know, I'll learn it someday. Right now I'm busy drawing hands. So I'm going to tighten in this profile shape. As you saw, I did sort of like some guidelines leading into where the finger curls, and I'll kind of erase it and adjust the shape a bit more, kind of flatten out that fist as a whole. It's feeling a little long, and that's just the beauty of digital art, you know? as someone who primarily uses my eye to kind of get where I want to be when it comes to drawing, just erasing and redrawing it takes a bit longer for me. So that's why I just love Liquify. Liquify is like a gift to all artists that want to draw and not erase and draw and erase and draw and erase 10 million times to get one specific little detail down that you like. Okay, now I want to transition into a different angle of the same fist, just the opposite side. For this one, you kind of want to approach it the same way. Make sure you're doing that square shape on the end, and you add that sort of kind of slopey shape that we were talking about with the second hand that I did on the side view. But when it comes to doing a punch on this side, you want to make sure that you're kind of having the fingers poke out from behind the pinky. Kind of gives you an idea, and as you do close your fist, if you look at it, you can see that they slowly poke out each finger, like slopes out a bit further than the pinky. So yeah, you gotta make sure you kind of convey that properly. And then you got your thumb, the black sheep of the fingers, and continue on with those slopes that kind of are those palms. And you want to just throw in that wrist. I'm going to try to fit it into the rest of these fists so I can have a proper little grouping and get some more room to do more hands. And we're going to continue with our little consistent lighting from above. So I'm going to throw some shadow on the bottom of it. And basically this whole palm is just going to be just enveloped in shadow because no light is getting over there. It's all on the top. It's not. It may squeak past a little bit on the end there. A little bit of rim light happening. But yeah, you can see how I tried to follow through with that sort of wrist vein that comes at the bottom of your palm. Alright. Now here we go. All the lame hands are out of the way. All the boring hands are done for. Get those out of here. It's time for my favorite type of hands. You'll see these hands in all of my drawings, pretty much. It's like the reaching out, sort of closing finger hand look, because it's the easiest to draw for me, and what feels like the most dynamic. So listen up. You're going to start with the little fingers, right? You're going to get those finger shapes in there. And to get the basic shape down, you're going to do like a step situation with the fingers. They're going to be like a stair step sort of shape going down, and these are just easy because it feels like the most anime type hands. But yes, once you're able to lay in those fingers, you can sort of work backwards from there and build in the hand. And you'll want to make sure the pinky is kind of the same length as the thumb, because if you do that hand shape, you'll see that they're kind of at the same level, and the rest of the fingers are just descending downwards into it. And I don't really focus on the length of each finger with this one, just because they're all coming at the camera. You do that little sort of palm shape. And yeah, dude, these are just my favorite types of hands. Once I figured out how to do this one, this was actually the first type of hand shape that I learned how to draw, just because it was the most easy at the time. And because I watched a lot of Dragon Ball and I wanted to draw a lot of Kamehamehas. And this is the shape. Yeah. So, just kind of laying in more details there, trying to really bold in the shape, the silhouette of the hand itself. Now check this out. This is going to blow your mind. This is going to be the biggest plot twist of your whole life. Your whole life has been leading up to this moment. I'm going to show you how to do like a hand that's giving you something or reaching out to take your hand. Are you ready for this? I don't think you are. But you better be. Strap in. You take that same one we just did, flip it around. There it is. It's done. It's a done deal. That's another hand in the hand encyclopedia, now you do want to kind of make it a bit less stressed or strenuous, I guess, to give it more of like a feel of a hand that's reaching out to take something from you if you're offering. But, I mean, come on. Isn't that not the coolest thing ever? You figure out one, you learn the other. I mean, granted, it's from the same angle, but you know what else is pretty sick? if you're a huge fan of Dragon Ball Z, you take that hand that you just flipped and tightened up, and you put it right under the hand that you had drawn before, and boom, you got a Kamehameha! What? Oh my god! Oh my god, come on. Come on. Alright, sorry, I'm nerding out a little bit. I know, it's a little cringy, but isn't that sick? Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Next up, we're gonna do like a little hand that's pointing to something. That's a very common hand that you see in a lot of anime. You know, a lot of people have to point things out. So we're going to basically take the foundation we learned with drawing the fist and basically draw the index finger outwards. And one thing to know about the index finger is when it's like pointing at an angle or at a foreshortened angle, you could really play with the curve of it. It could like almost be broken backwards if you really want to get crazy with the style. And I should say real quick that my wife is currently sleeping, so that's why I'm very, very sort of quiet with my excitement. So, and this is the easiest time to record videos and tutorials and everything is in the morning when everybody's still asleep. So, there it is. There's our little pointed finger. Like I said, dude, it's just a fist, but with the index finger pointed out. And you know, it's not rocket science. You could bend that finger as much as you want, and it kind of works in the same angle. As if you're able to learn drawing the fist in any angle, it's pretty easy to draw the pointed finger. Just because it's just basically a slight adjustment. So now I want you to remember this curve when it comes to the thumb on the hand. There's that really hard curve, because we're about to get a little crazy. We're about to get a little simple with it, with different angles and everything. Like this one, check it out. So if you're able to master the thumb curve coming off the wrist, then you can do hands that are like being thrown in the background with just sort of simple shapes with the fingers kind of jutting off from that hand. And just make sure that you get all your plane changes in there and you just suggest it, and you don't really have to get very detailed with it. Maybe throw the nail in there and that's it. You know, that's basically a hand that's being more thrown to the background, and that's kind of how I focus on when I'm doing my perspective drawings, is when I'm really making a hand reach into the foreground, I'm not focusing much on putting detail in the background hand. That's kind of less important, but still needs to retain its shape. I hope that made sense. Now we're gonna work into like more of a dainty girl-like hand, where it's just kind of turned upwards. And with this one, you want to focus a lot on the follow through in the slope of the wrist that leads into the finger. And then once you have that shape, you can kind of work off of that from pretty much anywhere. You can make the fingers go upwards, but in my case, I'm going to make them just kind of fan out downwards. And yeah, you just gotta basically draw the same finger. Make sure you're retaining the different finger lengths in this one, just because you're seeing a bit more of that bottom side of the hand. So unlike the Dragon Ball Kamehameha hand pose, you're actually seeing a view of the hand that really depends on the different lengths of the fingers. So yeah, make sure that longest middle finger is coming out first, and then kind of work downwards. Think of that stair-step shape going down. In this case, you can also group together the middle and the ring finger and maybe push out that back pinky, and then I'm just going to completely fill that in to kind of show that it's in the background there, give it some depth. And so, honestly, I regret to say, for some reason, some freakazoid reason, my recording stopped here. And I had it going the whole time. I thought I got it, but my iPad decided to say no, you're done recording. So I gotta rely on Procreate's handy dandy time-lapse, unfortunately, for the rest of these hands, so I'll try to just speed run through them. It's a bit more lower frame rate, but you'll get the idea as I fill them out. The one after this hand is another one of my favorites because it kind of works the same way as the Kamehameha hand. You start with the shapes of the fingers. I'm going to start talking really fast because I'm working with trying to teach during a time lapse, so just listen very carefully. But yes, you're going to start with the finger shapes first, but fanning them out a bit more. And even when you're working with perspective, the fingers can pretty much be ovals at that point because the rest of the finger is hidden in the foreshortening of the finger itself. And now we're going to take that same hand and bend it back again to show more of that opened up look, kind of maintaining all of the concepts that we talked about before with the fingers descending in size, coming from the middle finger, and the ring and the index finger keeping the same shape. And, you know, this one's kind of like that very first hand, but just more opened up. And I'm going to throw in that shadow and then move on to the next one, which is going to be the same one but backwards with the arm coming in from it. So you can even take the same one and flip it, but in my case I'm going to try to just focus on filling out the silhouette with the same bullet points we talked about, using that middle finger as an anchor point and descending from there down to the pinky and making sure that the index and the ring finger are the same length. Put in those nails to kind of show that we're looking at the top of the hand instead of the bottom, as opposed to the one on the right of it. And now one last very, very important tip that I want to try to hammer into you before this thing wraps up is if you are doing hands that are closed together in groupings of fingers, it's always really nice to make one of the fingers stand out from the others. Like most of the time it'll be the pinky, but it just kind of adds a subtle touch to a more lifelike hand. Kind of like, as you can see here, the pinky sticking out from the rest. It helps give more character, helps tell a bit more of a story. You can see that only the middle and the ring finger are touching the surface in this hand, and it just gives it more character, something else to look at, you know. But yeah, always make sure that you're kind of separating the fingers if you want to really push the subtlety of that hand. Another one I like to draw on women is that fist shape, but raising the pinky, kind of following through with what we were talking about breaking off the fingers. If you raise the pinky up, it just adds that nice subtle touch to it. There doesn't need to always be like a goal with the hands that you're drawing, but if you're just trying to maybe draw some sort of idle pose, maybe she's just holding her fist up thinking or something, it just kind of helps add to it. And here we go. We're going to throw in that shadow to define the palm and the direction of the fingers. And yeah, I just kind of like throwing up that pinky sometimes to help break the monotony of fists, I guess. And moving on to this next one is more of like a hand if you're a very animated talker, you know, when you're talking and you need to like move your hands a lot to express what you're saying. This could be one of those hands where it just has a bit of a subtle look, but you kind of still have that index finger broken off and the rest of the middle ring and pinky all grouped together. This is definitely one of those hands that's just used a lot in those comic panels where somebody's just trying to explain something. Another one, as we continue on with our whole idea of breaking off the finger, is you can do one kind of similar to the closed hand, but you could do the index finger instead. And it could just be like an idle hand that's resting. Could be maybe it's resting on the cheek, holding the head up, but you still have that one index finger kind of sticking out to create more character. Or you can do the pinky, but in this case I just want to stick with the index. And lastly, to finish off this hand sheet, I think I'm going to go with another side view similar to the one at the top right there, but the other side. So we're going to make sure I use the thumb to kind of use an anchor point and figure out how I want the hands to look. I feel like they're a bit too long right now, so for the pinky I'm going to kind of shorten it a bit, and I'm still trying to figure out how I want that index finger to look. But because I'm not sure what this hand is doing, more so just like a Muppet, you know? Could be like a hand that's inside of a puppet or something. But yes. Again, breaking off that back finger, adding it in shadow. But yeah, that's gonna pretty much wrap up my sheet of hands. Sign it, because you gotta sign your work. put in your little Instagram handle so people don't steal it. Yeah, dudes, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you picked up something, were able to learn something from it. I'm still trying to learn how to teach in a way that helps people understand, but these videos are helping me try to get better at it. But yeah, hopefully you picked something up from this, and I think next we'll do heads and expressions and emotions. But yeah, see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.